How does a nation's story stretch from rainforest hunter-gatherers 40,000 years ago to a powerful trading era, a half-century political dynasty, and then a sudden military takeover in 2023? Well, that is the sweeping, complex, and absolutely fascinating history of Gabon.
So to really get a handle on how Gabon got to this pivotal moment, we're going to journey through 5 key eras. We'll start with its ancient foundations, move into the game-changing Atlantic trading period, then French colonial rule, the incredibly long Bongo dynasty, and finally, we'll look at the events shaping Gabon right now. All right, first up, let's get a sense of just how deep Gabon's human history really goes. I mean, we're talking about a timescale that stretches way, way back.
The depth of this history is just incredible. I mean, look at this. The first evidence we have of people there goes back over 40,000 years. Then, around 3000 BC, you start to see the first settlements pop up along the coast. But the real shift, the big one, happens around 400 BC. That's when Bantu-speaking farmers arrive, and they bring with them agriculture and ironworking. These weren't just new tools, they were skills that would completely reshape the entire region for centuries.
Now, for a very long time, these societies were developing more or less on their own. But then, in the 15th century, Europeans arrive on the coast. And this didn't just start a new chapter, it totally rewrote the book for everyone living there.
And get this, the country's very name comes from this first moment of contact. In 1472, some Portuguese sailors thought the shape of the Como River estuary looked like a hooded cloak, which in their language is Gabon. The name just stuck, and a future nation got its name from a simple observation from the deck of a ship.
Now, it's easy to think that Europeans just showed up and dominated from day one, but that is not what happened. Instead, you had these really sophisticated local groups like the Mpongwe, the Irungu, and the Nkomi, who became the power players. They were the middlemen. They controlled the river routes and the flow of all the valuable stuff, ivory, rubber, wood, from deep in the interior out to the European ships. All this new trade, of course, created a ton of wealth and power. And what's so interesting is how different groups organized themselves to manage it. The Mpongwe, for instance, they went with a more decentralized system, using councils of elders from different clans. But the Orangu and the Nkomi, they developed more centralized monarchies, with a king and Ompolo chosen by a council. These were the political systems needed to run really complex trading empires. To really understand this era, we have to talk about slavery. And it's so important to recognize that, yes, forms of domestic servitude for labor already existed, but the demand from the transatlantic slave trade, well, it supercharged the whole system. It expanded it, it intensified it, and it created all new reasons for enslavement just to supply captives for the ships. And just to put Gabon's role in context, and look, any number here is a tragedy, but in the late 1700s, we're talking about maybe 500 people a year sold from its ports. Now that was significant for sure, but it was a fraction of the scale you saw in the massive slave trading hubs farther south, which were exporting tens of thousands every year. That trading era, with its powerful local brokers, eventually gave way to direct European control. This next phase is all about how France gradually, piece by piece, imposed its authority over the entire territory. And this process, it took nearly a century. You can really see how methodical the French takeover was. It wasn't a single invasion. It was more like a slow creep. It starts with treaties on the coast in the 1840s. By 1885, France occupies the country. And by 1910, Gabon isn't even its own colony anymore. It's just one piece of the massive French equatorial Africa. And that's how it would stay right up until independence in 1960. The ironies of this period are just staggering. And there's no better example than the story of the capital city, Libreville. The name literally means free town. So why would the colonizers call it that? Well, because it was founded in 1849 as a settlement for enslaved people who had been freed from an illegal slave ship, a town named for freedom founded in the middle of a colonial project.
Independence in 1960 arrives with so much promise, so much hope, but the nation's political path was very quickly dominated by one man, and then by his family, who would go on to rule for over half a century.
So right out of the gate at independence, you had two main political forces. There was the BDG, led by Gabon's first president, Léon Ma, and the UDOSSG, led by Jean-Hilaire Aubin. And at first, they actually tried to govern together, in a coalition. Their thinking was, hey, we're a small country, a competitive two-party system might tear us apart, so let's try to work together. But, as you can probably guess, that unity did not last. The early years were rocky. There was even a coup attempt in 1964 that was only stopped because French troops stepped in.
But the real, definitive turning point came in 1967. President Mba dies, and his vice president, a young guy named Albert Bernard Bongo, who we later know as Omar Bongo, takes power. And this guy? He moved fast. Within a single year, he'd banned all other political parties and declared Gabon a one-party state.
And that single move kicked off an era of political rule that is just mind-boggling. This one number says it all: 55 years. First, Omar Bongo ruled for 42 years, and when he died in 2009, his son, Ali Bongo, took over and ruled for another 14. An entire nation shaped by one family for over half a century.
So the big question is, how does an incredibly long era of family rule like that come to such a sudden, dramatic end? Well, that brings us to our final chapter, and right up to the events of today.
You could really start to see the cracks forming in the dynasty's foundation during Ali Bongo's time. His elections were always heavily disputed, especially the one in 2016, which led to a lot of unrest. Then you had a failed coup attempt in 2019, which was a huge red flag. The final act came in August 2023, right after another election that nobody believed was fair.
And that's when it all came to a head. Literally moments after Ali Bongo was declared the winner of that election, the military, led by General Brice Oligui Nguema, went on national television. They announced they were canceling the results, dissolving the government, and taking control. And just like that, the 55-year Bongo dynasty came to a stunningly abrupt end.
And so this leaves us with the critical question that everybody is asking now. With a transitional government in place and a definitive break from the past, Gabon is standing at a crossroads, a moment of profound uncertainty, but also, maybe, opportunity. What comes next for the nation?
If you found this deep dive into Gabon's history interesting, we've got a whole playlist of quick country histories just like it. You should definitely go check those out. And be sure to subscribe to Notebook Summary so you don't miss our next explainer. Thanks for watching.